Hoi4 has been out for almost 4 years now. Still, the historical grand strategy game from Paradox Interactive maintains a steady player base, owing in part to its development support through multiple free updates and DLCs, and in part to its mind-blowingly impressive modding community. The most impressive part, in my opinion, is that this is a history game that actually teaches you history. And I'm not talking about names, dates, equipment and such, because many games do that, and, anyone can open Wikipedia. I'm talking about actually understanding history. Welcome to Games and History. We're going to take a look at how Hoi4 can teach you history through its mechanical game design. Hoi4 is a game first and foremost about logistics, which makes sense because war is first and foremost about logistics. To explain how the game does this, we may as well dive right into its logistics simulation and explain how this can teach you about history. The game abstracts its resource management into 6 key resources: oil, aluminium, rubber, tungsten, steel, and chromium. All these resources indirectly fuel your war machine. First resource, oil, is converted into fuel which keeps your tanks, planes, and ships running. Without it, your impressive navy is useless. This is the historic dilemma that Japan faced in real life. They possessed one of the strongest navies in the world, but without oil, its navy would not be able to fight a prolonged war. If you activate the entirety of the Japanese navy in the 1939 start date, you end up with an estimate of 49 days worth of fuel before your stockpiles run completely dry. Now granted, realistically you wouldn't activate your fuel-guzzling battleships and aircraft carriers until you actually spotted the enemy. But it does illustrate the perilous oil situation in Japan. Japan's invasion of China and its atrocities there had provoked an oil embargo from the United States, which further choked Japan's imperialist ambitions. So this oil and fuel mechanic alone forces you as a player to think in the realpolitics terms of Japan. The game doesn't have to outright say that the oil situation is dire, the mechanics show it, and you live it. Now that is how you teach history through game design. The Germans are in a similar situation. They lack precious metals and oil, which hamstrings their development of mechanized infantry divisions and proper tank divisions. For this and other reasons, Germany historically lagged behind in its infantry mechanization. Now we can't talk about Germany and logistics without mentioning U-boats. Germany's 3 natural rivals at the beginning of the game are the Soviet Union, France, and the United Kingdom. Germany has faced this geographical dilemma for ages in which the British Navy can virtually uncontested assert control of the seas. Now why is that a problem? You probably guessed it, logistics. They who control the sea have free rein to raid the enemy's convoys. The First World War brought a possible solution for Germany, though it didn't quite go to plan in that war. The U-boat allows one to raid convoys without controlling the seas. U-boats are also fairly inexpensive and don't guzzle too much oil. That's a win-win for Germany. Now how does Germany raiding British convoys equalize the situation at sea? Because the United Kingdom is in exactly the same position as Germany when it comes to oil. Virtually all British oil is imported. So if the Germans can cut off their oil supplies, they've essentially rendered the mighty British Navy completely useless. So the mechanics of the game actually pull you towards adopting strategies similar to those that were adopted historically. You're not just playing Germany, you're thinking like Germany. The air war can also be all about logistics when you boil it down to it. If you're in for a long war, you usually have to start thinking about strategic bombing. This means bombing infrastructure, production facilities, ports, airports, and more that will have a long-term effect on the war. The goal is essentially to put the enemy in a position in which they have already lost on paper. This sort of bombing is quite effective in the game, provided you can assert air superiority, the situation in which you can control the airspace and can maintain your bombing over a longer period of time. This means you'll have to supply your bombers with oil and replacements should they get shot down by AA, interceptors, or just suffer accidents. The latter can actually be a result of your poor design patterns that you created for your bombers, or, them just operating in bad weather. Once you've totaled your enemy's production facilities, their troops will start suffering from the lack of replacement equipment. They will be unable to make any headway in the field, and any momentum they once had grinds to a standstill. At this point, the war is essentially yours to lose. From this, you can see how virtually every core mechanic in the game is affected by logistics. World War II has been mythologized as a war of machines, but in truth, it's a war of logistics. While having more troops than your enemy, or having a better tactical plan than your enemy, having better doctrine than your enemy, or having better technology than your enemy will help you, none of those things matter unless you have mastered the art of logistics. And that is the most important lesson that Hoi4 can teach you about the history of World War II. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you found this interesting, I urge you to join the Discord community where we talk about history and other things all the time. It's a very friendly community. If you'd like to find more content by me, you can find me on Twitch where I livestream, and you can find me on Twitter. Both of those you can find a link to in the description down below. Other than that, I want to say thank you so much to the people who support me on Patreon. If you'd like to join them, you can find a link to that in the description down below as well. And as you might be able to tell, my voice is giving out, so I'm going to end this video and say thank you so much for watching. I want to try to make more of these videos in the future where I talk about the most important things you can learn about history from video games and how video games can help you learn history. So if you'd like to see more of this, please hit that like button. Other than that, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.